Hello everyone, welcome to Sermon Prep. I'm Father Brett Williams. It's always good to welcome you to these little sessions where we dig deeper into God's Word. And the reason we do that is to better hear His voice. God speaks to us in so many different ways, but particularly in the Scriptures, especially in our readings at the Eucharist. And so as we dig deeper here, hopefully we hear God a little bit clearer. Okay, so let's look at the readings for this Sunday. This Sunday coming is the 21st Sunday of Ordinary Time in Cycle A. And our first reading is taken from the prophet Isaiah, chapter 22, verses 19 to 23. Our responsorial psalm is Psalm 138. In the second reading, we continue reading from St. Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 11, verses 33 to 36. The Gospel passage is taken from St. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 16, verses 13 to 20. That gospel story is the story of Simon Peter's profession of faith. You are the Christ. You are the Son of the living God. That story of Peter professing his faith at Caesarea Philippi is found in all three of the synoptic gospels. And pretty much all of them have that story in the middle of the gospel. So, if we consider that St. Matthew's Gospel is 28 chapters long, this is in chapter 16, it's almost in the middle. And if you look at Mark and Luke, you'll see that it's pretty much in the middle too. The Gospel writers wanted to show that there are all sorts of things that build up to this very important point. Jesus has been ministering, Jesus has been performing miracles, healing people, teaching, and now they're at Caesarea Philippi, up north, right at the north of the Holy Land, where there were all sorts of pagan temples, where lots of pagan worship happened. And in the midst of all this, Jesus asks them, who do you say that I am? And Simon Peter responds. And then from that moment, things sort of change. Yes, there's still some healings and miracles, of course, but Jesus is moving towards Jerusalem and ultimately his suffering, death, and resurrection. And all three of the synoptic evangelists situate this Caesarea Philippi event in the middle. And so it's leading up to that, preparing them for what's going to happen in Jerusalem. Well, if we look at our gospel, it too seems to have two parts. First part is verses 13 to 16, where Jesus asks them, who do people say that I am? And they give all sorts of responses. Verse 17, Jesus responds to what they've said, responds to what Simon Peter has professed. In the first part, they offer suggestions. Some say John the Baptist. That's a bit of a strange suggestion, isn't it? People had known John the Baptist. Jesus had known John the Baptist. He'd been alive when Jesus was alive. John had baptized Jesus. Yes, 2 chapters earlier in Matthew's Gospel, John has been beheaded, he has died, but wonder how Jesus could suddenly have been at the same time as John. John dies and now suddenly Jesus is John. A bit of confusing suggestion, weird suggestion by them, hey? Others say Elijah, others say Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. They sort of recognize that Jesus is really prophetic. He's saying all sorts of amazing things. He seems to be in the mold of the prophets, and so that's why they jump to that suggestion. And then, of course, Simon Peter says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." He's hit the nail on the head. He's got it right. Jesus must have been thinking to himself, "Phew, thank you, somebody was paying attention, hey? All you teachers out there must probably have had similar sorts of responses or feelings when a student answers your questions correctly." Yeah, he's got it right. And because of that, Jesus says, well, you're going to have the authority. And the clearest sign of authority is the key, which is going to be carried over the shoulder. Why? Because in the time of Jesus, in ancient times, keys were big things. They weren't little ones like we have today. They were big and heavy. So they were like slung over the shoulder to carry them. And those who had authority, kings, rulers, would give their prime minister the key as a symbol of they could go anywhere. They could go into the palace, they could go anywhere in the kingdom. So this key is the symbol of authority, and it links, that's the link with the first reading, and we'll get to that just now. The other thing that stands out for me from this gospel, and then obviously also the first reading, is the sense of authority, leadership. And while Peter is given that leadership, that authority, it's vested in the church, in the community. The church with Peter has the authority. I think in our modern day, where there are many people who moan and grumble about the Pope, the papacy, Pope Francis, perhaps forget the very important lesson that this gospel teaches us, that we are all together with authority under and with the Peter of our day. We can't act outside of Peter, away from Peter, by ignoring Peter, the Pope, and still maintain our authority. We get our authority, we get our position as being a sign of God's kingdom because we are all in unity. And so leadership is almost like it, as we say in this parish, a team thing. Yeah, there is the leader, but we operate and work together in unity. Okay, we bring our different gifts and we act in unity. So that's an important thing that comes out from that gospel for me. Okay, the first reading, Isaiah. Well, of course, the king giving the key and the gospel. So what's the context? King Hezekiah is the king, and he's got a prime minister called Shebna. And Shebna's done something wrong. For us here in South Africa, we would guess he was corrupt or overstepped his mark or was stealing money or something like that. I don't know exactly what Shebna's done. He's certainly not very efficient, and King Hezekiah has got had enough of him. So he passes the leadership, his prime minister, now to Eliakim. And Eliakim is, we can see from how Isaiah speaks of him, a man of integrity, somebody who's really going to make an impact as prime minister. And he's given this key, the symbol of authority and leadership. But there are also other symbols. He's given a robe and a belt, and he sits on a throne. All those things are indications of his authority, his leadership position. But it's important to note that at the time of Isaiah, leaders were leaders because of God's choice of them. God sustained their leadership. In many ways, they acted on behalf of God. And I think that's something perhaps in our modern world that's lost a little bit. People think it's about themselves and what they can get. Okay. I think also important to see right at the end, the last verse there, talking about a throne of honor to his father's house. This idea of intimate relationship, that the leader should act and be like a father, not an aloof horrible dictatorial king, but like a father, care for his family. Okay, I think that's important. Second letter, Paul writing to the Romans. What have we been listening to over these last few Sundays? Paul getting frustrated that the Jewish brothers and sisters are not responding to the message that he has. He wants his Jewish brothers and sisters to follow Jesus, and they don't. And he's getting quite fed up. He's sort of at his wit's end. And so you'll see there are more questions than answers in this short little passage. You can imagine Paul going, what's going on? Why can't you see? Maybe teachers watching this will also understand that feeling, emotion. But the Jews are not responding. The pagans, the Gentiles are. And so Paul is just saying, well, obviously God's ways are not our ways. Who can understand God? I'm working for the Jews. In fact, it's not them responding, it's the Gentiles. And God does work in incredible ways. He surprises us. He does things we don't expect. And that's what Paul is grappling with here. While he's upset that the Jews are not responding, he's seeing and being quite thankful and grateful that at least somebody is responding to the message he is proclaiming. Okay, so some interesting thoughts there, I think. I think it's beautiful, a beautiful set of readings about leadership, authority. I think also the wonderful ways God uses our leadership, our authority. Okay, so this Sunday is the 21st Sunday of Ordinary Time. I hope you will join us. I hope you'll be with us. We start Stewardship Month, and that's always an exciting time in the parish, how we can share and respond to God's word by giving of ourselves, our time, our talents, and our treasures. I look forward to seeing you all. Have a great rest of the week. God bless. Bye-bye, everyone.